Welcome back to the Always Thinking Mindset channel, where we give you positive vibes and simple rules to achieve your goals. Now, in today's video, we're going to learn about whether you can get sued for owning rental property. Nobody likes to get sued. But before we begin, I want to put a disclaimer out there. I am an attorney, just not your attorney. If you do any serious decision making, please hire your own professional, whether it's legal, professional, tax, anything. Don't trust the guy on the internet. Always hire your own. And on top of that, if you like today's video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It does help the algorithm. No subscription necessary. You're not going to be sued, hopefully. But if you love this channel, then you already know what to do. So let's go ahead and get started. Lawsuits in America. Well, you got to live in America to get sued, but yeah, being sued is not fun, right? And whenever you own real estate or rental properties, then they try to combine those to get more out of your pocket as a landlord. So the first rule, the way you can get sued is personal injury. All right. So the way this works is that whenever you have a guest over or somebody lives on your property, remember you have to be the owner of the property. Whether it's it's under your personal name or your LLC, don't worry, they can still find a way to get you and put you on the hook. But personal injury has to do with anything where an individual gets hurt on your property, based on your negligence and whether you knew about it or not. But before we go into that whole spectrum and start getting nitty gritty on the details, just personal injury in general. If you have a tenant living in your, I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible. So if you have a tenant in your house and they get hurt in your property, whether they fall down, the most common is slip and falls. But on top of that, if they end up cutting themselves, using a ladder that you had put out, yes, you can get sued for that. So the way it goes about it is they bring a claim. They usually go against your insurance because your insurance has more money, and this is why it's important to have an umbrella policy or some kind of extra additional income in case these bills get out of hand, because then you're liable and you're on the hook. But that is the first way you can get sued, owning rental property. The second way has to do with more of health and safety. What does this mean? This means you as a landlord have to provide a reasonable, safe environment in a reasonable, safe manner. So yes, we all understand cockroaches and mices and vermin and stuff like that. But if it's uninhabitable, that means the roof is caving in. Yeah, there's pests everywhere. You're going to get in trouble, right? Because on top of that, they can come after you for health and safety violations, depending on your jurisdiction, right? Whether it's local or state or sometimes even federal law. But with health and safety, it has to do a lot with just uh, supplying a property that's health, and you cannot give somebody that's living on your premises. I don't see why you would do this, but mold, asbestos, any kind of health or hazard that's going to affect the tenant, you don't want those problems, because in the end, they are going to sue you. They will take you to court. They will come after you, whether it's personally or under your LLC or entity, because a lot of people think that that's just a shield. And, that's a whole different video in itself. But they can come after you because you do own the property. On top of that, they will find a way. And there's this thing called discovery in lawyer land, that they will get more and extract more information out of it. But back to my second rule of health and safety, please provide a safe and habitable premise, dwelling. And this is, what I'm talking about usually can apply to both single family and multifamily units. It's different in office environments and stuff like that. But in the end, you as a landlord have the responsibility to maintain that property, to make sure it's not in a dangerous way, including health and safety, whether it's within the walls or, it's just a vermin pest problem, which actually compromises the tenant in there from, stop getting mitigating those risks. But leads me to my last rule of contracts, right? Because a lot of people think, yeah, okay, well, we knocked out one, which was personal injury. People can get hurt on your property. Second one has to do with health and safety of the property. But then contracts, people forget that, right? There's a lease in place. What does this mean? That means you as a landlord have to follow rules, and the tenant as a tenant has to follow rules. The most basic overview of this is that the tenant has to pay rent on time, and the landlord has to supply a safe and healthy environment for the tenant. And if any repairs happen, usually the landlord has to jump into, uh, landlord mode and get those fixed, but in a reasonable time. Everything depends on the contract. Everything depends on the lease, because when they sign that contract, it makes you as a landlord accountable, and it makes the tenant accountable. Because let's say that the landlord doesn't want to fix plumbing issues or something, because that means the tenant can withhold rent depending on jurisdiction. This isn't for everyone, but usually they can withhold rent, usually against the landlord. But not only that, if they bring suit, they can show them the reasonable costs and the fact that the landlord failed to mitigate any kind of repairs, necessary repairs. We're not just talking about anything where a tile or a piece of sheetrock, hole in the sheetrock, right? It has to be something unreasonable is the word. But on top of that, it's just look at the contract, right? Because the contract lays the foundation for everything, including the landlord. You have to give notice, 30 days, 60 days. What's the security deposit? What do we do in case we can't agree? Does it go to mediation? Is it file suit first? Do you have to do certain things? There's so many things in the lease that usually you have to check and make sure that everything's accordingly. Because just like a landlord, if the tenant ends up skipping town, you can go after them and hopefully track them down and get your rents. Because depending on whether you do a month-to-month contract, 1 year contract, 2 year contract, you are entitled to those rents and you can get them on the hook. So just contracts in itself, the four corners document, you have to look at that, look at all the leases, all the provisions in there, and make sure you're comfortable with that. Because in the end of the day, like I said, everybody can be happy, rainbow unicorns, and yes, landlord tenant, we're the best dual friends until boom, it hits the fan. Next thing you know, I'll see you in court. I'm getting my lawyers involved, and I'm gonna sue the pants off of you. So, with that being said, those are three ways you can get sued with your rental properties. Remember, it's more than just these variables, but on top of that, please, do the best you can, especially as a landlord and a tenant. It's a two-way street here, right? Because you have to follow laws with both, right? You promise not to damage the landlord's house, burn it down, or do anything egregious. Landlords just, they have to follow rules of making repair costs, but on top of that, anything that the tenant has at hand in order to get it rented. But if you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. It does help the algorithm. And if you love this channel and you love this video, then you already know what to do. Please check out my other videos as well. I have plenty of information on the other videos. Like I said, I am a lawyer. I'm just not your lawyer. And hopefully in the future, depending on what your requests are, I can start dissecting some of these. But until next time, folks, we will speak soon.